What up, everybody? It is your host, Coach C, and I'm here with a hostile takeover of Motivational Monday. I'm here on behalf of Kira while she travels the nation repping for Life Guys, gang, gang, and our partners. And I wanted to let you guys know we have these events weekly and monthly, and these events are hosted by wonderful guides such as today's, who I'll introduce later. And they're here to help support your journey and for you to be the best version of yourself. And so today's conversation is going to be about how to support men and how to help them thrive in relationships. And so today, the two of us are talking. This is my wonderful husband, Philip Barnes. He is one of our amazing guides here. I'll drop his link a little bit later. And this conversation is very personal for me because we're talking about men's well-being, but this especially helps me support my husband today because we did lose somebody important to us, his grandmother. So rest in peace, Miss Joanne. And so this is very, very important to us to have a conversation about today. And it is one of the ways in which I am so excited to show you how I love my husband out loud. So welcome, Philip.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. And so this is Philip Barnes. He is an amazing life guide. You have seen him plenty of times before. This is my husband, the Clyde to my Bonnie with this hostile takeover, my best friend, my man, my baby, my baby. A man who his sensitivity and strength have really shaped the way I understand love and men's well-being. And so Philip's superpower is that he thinks he's Kevin Gates and he don't get tired, but also he his superpower is righteous truth telling with care, allowing people to express what they feel without losing their dignity. And so I will be moderating today. And so you'll get to hear more from Philip because I know every time y'all hear me, I just be talking with Kira. And so we're going to have a real conversation today about what it means for men to be emotionally healthy, supported, respected, and accountable. And welcome, Philip. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you again. I appreciate it. And great intro, babe. I appreciate that. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I call him PB. This is his nickname for the public. About your journey as a man and why having a thriving relationship matters for men and especially for you today.
So I guess I'll get a little personal first and say that it has been a winding road. And while I have not discovered all things man, I do think that uh I try to embody what it means to be a good man at all times. First, a little bit of nerdy stuff, right? Masculinity research shows that rigid expectations around emotional control and self-reliance are connected to poor mental health and also willingness to seek help. So essentially, if men are taught to not feel and to hide how they feel. Um, a lot of people think that's just a personality issue. They want to be disingenuous or they want to be liars or things like that, but that's actually not the case. Society has kind of groomed us into being that way, and it is absolutely a well-being issue. The truth is, men are sensitive. Maybe this is the first time people have heard that, but men are sensitive, very sensitive, and the other truth is we also don't necessarily always have healthy ways of expressing our sensitivity, right? And so instead of saying I'm hurt or I'm angry or something is bothering me, men do a lot of things that people would consider toxic, stonewalling, which is being silent, creating distance. They may um use humor, and even sex. We'll talk about actually sex later on in the conversation, but just understand that men don't always have language for pain, and a lot of society teaches men not to have language for pain, excuse me. But thriving relationships matter because men need space where we can be honest and still respected. Like we deserve to be challenged. We need to be challenged. But we also don't necessarily need the shame that comes along with that. We can be loved, but not necessarily babied in a sense. Um, and we can also exude strength without actually being emotionally unreachable, you know. So I'll just say a lot of men aren't hard because they're healthy. They're hard because society and even in their relationships sometimes nobody gives them room to be anything else.
Mm. Wow. There's like this rigid expectation, like a cookie cutter expectation of the multi-layered facets of a man. And earlier you said self-reliance, and it was a joke about Kevin Gates, not thinking you get tired, but self-reliance will make you think that you're like Superman, and you are my Superman, but Superman is a fictional character that doesn't necessarily get tired. Y'all do, and I think we conflate like men having endurance versus actually doing what they need to do but still needing rest. And I think a lot of us confuse being supported versus being fixed. We confuse those a lot, especially in relationships, especially male female relationships romantically. We conflate support with fixing. And if nothing else today, and every day, I want to be able to learn endlessly how to support you, not fix you. We were talking earlier, and I overheard you say that, like, today's sensitive subject of your grandmother passing, there are no right words to say to someone, especially, in this context, a man, when you're dealing with loss. And a lot of times we try to fix by filling in the silence, and we'll talk about that later. And so it's important to have this conversation because we have to know, like, adults and men particularly don't need fixing. Y'all need support. Before we continue, y'all, in the chat, I want to shout out, men. We do this only for Father's Day, and y'all will get like grilling tools for Father's Day, right? Shout out somebody you love. That's a male in the chat, please. If you're a man, shout yourself out, please. Throw it in the chat. Today's conversation is so important. I think a lot of men learn how to support other people, and that's what you're learning today, babe. But shout men out, please. Don't just wait until Father's Day or their birthday. Please shout out somebody that you love, somebody that's special to you in the chat. And so as we continue doing that, babe, what does well-being mean for you that has nothing to do with me? I know a lot of times you'll bring up learning about yourself in order to be well, to support me, our household, our six puppies, and then now you're learning to support your family in this time. But what does it mean outside of being my husband or a brother or a son or anyone else's expectation for you in terms of well-being?
Um, I think that's actually a really good question. Because oftentimes, especially when you are in relationships, whether it be boyfriend, girlfriend, fiancé ships, or marriage, a lot of times we define ourselves based off of who we are to our partner. And we do have to learn to define ourselves outside of that. Well-being is inner peace to me. I think that is the most concise way that I could say. It's being able to look in the mirror and respect the man that I see, and understand that I have inherent value to me while also having value to these other things. But it has to come from me first, you know. I know that you love me and I know that you care about me. I know that you support me in all the ways that you do. But my self-worth is self-worth, which means that it has to come from me first. I have to be able to look at myself and say, yes, I love that man. Yes, he is valuable. Yes, he is important. um, and I think that a lot of men don't necessarily get that opportunity or even learn to look at themselves in that way. You know, you can love me deeply, but you can't be my entire growth and healing process. Like that it just can't come from you. It has to come from me. Also, I think that it's important to know that a lot of times when men think of well-being, what do we go to first? Physicality. Like, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
Yep.
we will how high we can jump, how fast we can run, how much we can lift. Um, and the truth is, while people do look at the exterior of you, what people will stay for is who you are as a person, like the interior of yourself? What is your heart? What is your mind? What does your soul exude? And how comfortable are they with that? And so we oftentimes don't speak to that enough. And I think that there is more room um to have those type of conversations with men. You know, you should not ever just be training your body without training the rest of yourself. Because that's not necessarily well-being. If you continue to do that, all you'll do is continue hurting people because you're just physically prepared or physically attractive, but you are not mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so.
Mm, that is such a bar because I remember when I was on POF looking for my husband, and I remember saying, like, I don't know if any of y'all, if y'all heard the term sapiosexual, put it in the chat. And I learned that term because I wanted a man that was endearing to me mentally and emotionally. And that means that he would have to be attuned mentally and emotionally, right? And so I think that speaks to a lot of the things that we don't speak about men. Stereotypically, like you said, and I'm a trainer and I'm well into fitness. So for me, I would immediately go to well-being in the physical sense. But if all of that, I always bring up Chad Ochocinco. I know he might never come across these videos, but I always bring him up to say that like he looks a certain way on the outside, but he eats unhealthy, right? For him, contextually, he eats a lot of McDonald's. And so metaphorically, his insides aren't matching the exterior in terms of what well-being might look like. Mentally and emotionally, he might be great, but I use all that because stereotypically we only see men's well-being as the external, like you said. And something you said earlier is self-worth. I think that's a part of well-being we don't discuss enough is you can't teach someone how to love you if you don't learn to love yourself. And you said self-worth. That's powerful because it separates love from dependency. Like I'm sure you've heard the term like or the phrase you complete me, right? And that has to be debunked because when you come together in any kind of relationship, y'all, whether it's platonic, romantic, professional, you should not be waiting for someone to complete you. Come to the relationship whole, not perfect. There's a difference. Come to the relationship whole so that there's not this big void if someone doesn't do what you expect them to do. People are fallible. We make mistakes. And so men have to be able to be okay with not being perfect. And we set up these statuesque images of men that they can't come down from off their pedestals. And so speaking to that, Mr. Barnes, tell me a little bit about your truth. Like, because we talked about the physicality and basically stereotypes, cookie cutter things. Tell me what your truth is that mismatches or misaligns with what people stereotype about you as a man.
Oh, that's actually pretty easy. I am everything that people would say weak men is in stereotypical fashion. I'm
Mm.
sensitive, I'm nurturing, I'm caring, maybe not necessarily supportive, but especially the sensitive, nurturing, and caring. Like a lot of people don't necessarily uh, attribute that to a strong man. However, that is one of the things that I think endears me to you the most is the idea that I can sense things that you're not trying to say, and I can sense emotions that you're trying to hide, even without you never having said a word. All I have to do is look at you, and I can tell. Like, yo, what your face? What's going on? You know what I mean? And you'll give me nothing 20 times, and then you'll finally come and say it. I can definitely tell that that there is something there, and I think that that sensitivity is something that we don't talk about enough, because we have a stereotype for men that they can never necessarily reach. If you are sensitive, then you're soft. If you're not sensitive, then you are a hole. And like there is no essentially in between. And the truth is, what we crave is balance. And I think that men have to also understand that they should exude balance because in your relationships, whatever relationship it is, I believe in servant leadership. And so if you're going to ask for these things, then I think you should be able to um exude them first. You know what I mean? And so Like in our marriage, like if I want great communication, then I should be able to show you what great communication looks like because that's a desire for me. You know, if I want emotional safety, then I should be able to provide you emotional safety. If I want you to be patient, then I should be able to show you what patience looks like because the entire essence of what I think leadership is being able to say, hey, like I'm not just asking you for these things without not being able to show you what these things look like. There has to be an example so that you and I can never say that you have never seen those things, you know?
Mm,
And it it's just that important to me to be able to give you what you need and also be attuned to maybe even what you're not saying in a way that is still me, but also endears you to me as a man, you know?
mm,
And so, all I'm basically saying is like men want things from women, but to be able to say that you want those things from women, I think you need to ask yourself a question or your partner. We'll say your partner. You want something from your partner or in any relationship, you need to ask yourself, are you providing that? And then if the answer is maybe, or if the answer is no, then the next question you should ask yourself is, well, why are you asking for something that you're not willing to provide yourself?
mm. Come on, Pastor Barnes. You see he got his little suit on that looks like he stepped in front of a pulpit? That's Pastor Barnes coming out. Honestly, nah, seriously, we all said he could have been a pastor in another life because that was bars. Like, I always say this, when you go into a relationship, relationships can be positively transactional and they need to be always reciprocal. And that needs to mirror what it is you're requesting. So I always say to people, what do you bring to the table? Asking for something that you then don't provide reciprocally is a disservice to yourself and others because you will not know how to receive it. And then the very thing they're giving you, they're not getting in return in some way. And so I feel like we have to understand reciprocity. And in this conversation, we need to understand reciprocity for men because if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, that reciprocity looks different. I may not be physically strong. I'm strong. Okay, I can bench 340 like him, but in other respects, the physicality might not be there. And we don't expect it to be there, even if you are a man. But the ways in which a man expects, you teach people how to love you, the ways in which a man expects reciprocity looks different from a woman, right? No matter the dynamic of the relationship. And so I love what you said because you have to take an inward inventory of yourself, and that helps relationships make room for either truth or punishment. Because if a man is sensitive for traditional ideals of men, there may be punishment if he's sensitive, right? And a relationship shouldn't require a man to become emotionless just to be respected. And so we really have to ensure we're cultivating the right things for a positive sense of self. So let me ask you, Mr. Barnes, how can relationships cultivate that positive sense of self, especially when it comes to emotional conversations and conflict?
I mean, I think the first thing that maybe needs to be said is the idea that like men and women inherently have different language. And so the ways in which we perceive and express ourselves is different from the way y'all do. You know what I mean? And so um that may be a reason why the man maybe is not expressing himself to his significant other is because they have not found that kind of communicative connection that will allow that man to be honest in those moments to where the woman can actually hear what he's saying in a way that doesn't make him feel judged or something like that. And so I think that that's important to know because a lot of men are not naturally expressive. Part of that is obviously societally, like men, men are taught not necessarily to speak on things that they may be dealing with or things like that. But I think another part of that is just the idea that we inherently embody different language, and relationships help you bear that out. Let me say this though, and I think this is important to um to broach is the idea that the most important relationship that you can have is with yourself. And I think by understanding the relationship that you have with yourself, there are certain things that should be unacceptable to you, such as giving yourself to everybody and men as men. Um, Sometimes, because I don't want to blanket statement this, but sometimes men feel like they need to sow their royal oats everywhere, right? Like, you know what I mean? They'll just, go and do what they do everywhere. And what you don't realize is you're giving a piece of yourself to people you never intend on being with, being around, cultivating an active relationship with, or even seeing again. So why do they get a piece of you? And I think that you have to understand that there is a certain amount of self-respect that should come from the idea that you don't need nor have to give a piece of yourself to everybody just because you feel like you should. And then you should also ask yourself, why is this desire there? What about me, or what about my thought patterns or things like that makes me feel like I want to give a piece of myself to everybody, and especially the people I don't care about? Save yourself is essentially what I'm saying, for the people who need a piece of you, not necessarily for everybody who wants a piece of you. So I'll get off my soapbox. Anyways, like, all in all I'm saying is like men don't men have a responsibility to not be unclear about themselves forever, right? Like, you do have a responsibility to learn who you are, what you need, and then how to communicate that to whoever you are in relationship with, whether it's platonic or romantic. And the truth is, some men aren't actually refusing to communicate. We don't learn how to speak what we feel or what we think. And when we do, sometimes it can be hard to translate. And so, you know, we just got to understand that loving and respecting yourself, I think, should be the paramount goal for any man in any relationship. Because if you do that, then you can also teach women how to love themselves and love you at the same time.
That is so true. And when we had this conversation in preparation about language barriers per se, what did you say about veterans and men? Shout out if there's any veterans in the chat or anyone who knows a veteran, please shout
Hey.
them out. Thank you for your service. Um,
Hey, thank you for the support. I just said that veterans sometimes don't like talking to non-veterans, I'll say, or civilians is what we call them. Just because, like, we speak a language that only we understand, and we assume that if we speak it to civilians, they won't get it. And so we refrain from that until we meet more of our own kind. Men and our language is kind of like that.
mm, that Yeah. Like we said, there can be differences in what we expect, and those breakdowns in communication are something you want to have an early intervention for, right? But that early intervention starts with you. Like you said, you talked about basically holding yourself to standards that you wouldn't accept. And so I'm hearing self-accountability. Am I getting that right? Yeah. So accountability to self kind of looks like a scoreboard. This man loves basketball. I love basketball too. And I think of accountability like a scoreboard. We went go-kart racing and oh my gosh, I was so trash to myself. And he had to tell me like it's not about beating everyone else on the track. It's about besting yourself, being better than your best, right? And that sounds like accountability is thinking of relationships like the relationship with yourself, as you said, is best served starting with you, and then having that scoreboard for yourself, and therefore being able to kind of show that to other people in a relationship. So, in a relationship, how do you create the scoreboard to realize and notice your personal best? And then, how does your partner, your significant other, hold you accountable to that?
I think the first thing is men need accountability, because it inherently allows us to show tap into something that's innate to us, and that's the ability to, or the propensity to be needed and be wanted, but not in an unhealthy way. You know what I mean? Like you can take the top off of, some pickles or jelly or something like that. But sometimes you let me do it just so, I know that like, yeah, you know what I mean? I did that. You know what I'm saying? But, at the same time, men do need accountability. But also that accountability can't come at the price of downing that man to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like there are times when holding that man to account often comes with a negative view of what he's done, and that will make anybody, but especially men, decide that they don't want to open themselves up to you because every time they do, the words are not positive, they are negative. And so we need positive affirmation. And I think that that's something that a lot of times gets lost. Um, and then the only other thing I'll say, because I'm keeping my eye on the time, is we need the opportunity to be able to lean into whole person wellness. And I want people to understand that like a man is not just well because he's standing, because he's in front of you, because he can go to the gym every day and come home and go to work and all of these things. And it just seems like it's a monotonous routine. He's not well just because he's still standing. He's well when he can carry responsibility without abandoning himself in the process. The first person that that man should be loving is himself in a way that shows him that he deserves the love that he's getting, which is something I didn't even get to. But he deserves the love that he is getting, and therefore can pass that love through him or be a conduit for love from whoever is giving it to him to the people who need it the most from him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it goes back to loving, like you said, loving yourself and ensuring that the standard you hold yourself to is the same standard that you require from everyone else as men. I love what you said about men not just being strong because they're standing up in front of you. We love boxing, and yesterday we watched a match where he was getting pummeled, right? It was Gamboa versus Davis, and Davis was pummeling him, and Gamboa was getting hit, and he kept going down, but he kept getting back up. If you look at that man outwardly, you'd be like, oh, he's strong because he keeps getting back up. What's going on inside? He was tired after. He was defeated after. There are so many things that we don't give language for in these conversations, and I wish we had so much more time to talk about them. But what I'm taking from this conversation overall is that men's well-being requires more than just telling men to be strong or expecting outwardly that they are. It requires space. That's something we didn't even get to, is space and room for men to be honest. And something else, again, in honor of our grandmother, Miss Joanne, is space for silence. Sometimes men process their feelings in ways that you can't chatter through, giving space, right, for that. And so it requires emotional safety for men, personal responsibility, self-respect, and just knowing that a thriving relationship isn't going to fix, and it shouldn't be to fix, mother. That's another thing, ladies, mother a man or silence a man. There's a difference between constructive criticism and feedback. Sometimes even criticism alone gets conflated. And so we got to do a better job with feedback too, as men learn to navigate emotional awareness. And so I want to thank y'all so much for being here today for our first Bonnie and Clyde takeover for Life Guides on Motivational Monday while I rep for Kira and Life Guides. I want to thank my amazing husband for showing up with honesty and vulnerability, especially on today's with today's context. And I want to let y'all know next week we're going to be talking with Kira and Percy about accountability, community, and physical well-being when it comes to men. And so that's going to be Motivational Men Day. Again, today was Motivational Men Day, next week. And so make sure y'all fill out the survey if you get it and let us know how you felt about today's session. And I want to thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for lighting up the chat. Shout out some men before we rock out at 9 my time. Shout them out real quick. Yourself, if you're a man, shout yourself out before we leave. All right. Thank y'all so much. Have a wonderful day. We appreciate y'all. Bye.